There's a room in the house where my father keeps secret research for his biotech company. I finally broke the lock. Part 2 link, Part 3 link. It had been racking my brain for months. What exactly did he keep in there? Why was he being so secretive? Even when I was younger, my father was more than happy to share his work with me at the dinner table. I listened intently, fascinated by the projects his biotech lab was working on. I didn't understand most of the jargon, but that's probably why he was so willing to reveal the hidden truths of the trade. He knew I wouldn't retain enough to be a liability. But then there's the room. It was an extension of his bedroom, one that was built when we moved in so he could do some of his work from home. Its secrets were locked behind a cast iron door, and no matter how many times I asked, my father would not divulge what he described as being classified research. Eventually, I stopped nagging him about it. That brings us to the other day. My father woke me at 6:30 a.m. sharp for my weekly blood draw. It was something he started last year as a precaution, knowing the dangers he potentially brought home each day. He felt the need to check in and make sure I hadn't been infected with one of the many strains of harmful bacteria he worked with. Up to that point, I was in tip-top shape, no issues since the day he started. This day, however, broke the streak. My dad went to his secret room, ran his usual tests on my blood, and raced back to see me, startled by an alarming discovery. My blood had been tainted by something. As he described it, he assured me there was nothing to worry about. He would just need to go into work to run some more scans and get second opinions on the data. He promised to be back before dinner. With that, he rushed out the door, clearly rattled by his findings. When dinner time rolled around and he wasn't home, I became a bit worried and called him. He answered and said there were more tests to be performed, but everything was looking good. He told me to cook one of the microwave meals in the freezer and not to wait up, as he would be late arriving home. I did as he instructed and got ready for bed. That's when an idea sprung to mind. I had attempted to open my father's secret door on many occasions. To no avail. There were 2 deadbolts in place, as well as a run-of-the-mill padlock, without the 3 separate keys needed to unlock it. It was a fruitless endeavor. Still, it was fun to try and imagine the wonders that would await me upon potentially opening it. It was the fuel that sparked many of my daydreams over the years, as I so often did when he wasn't home. I ventured into his bedroom and walked over to the mysterious door. Upon closer inspection, I was surprised to see the deadbolts undone. The only thing standing between me and my dad's classified research was the cheap lock hanging at the door's handle. He must have left in such haste that he didn't feel the need for redundancy. Sure, I wouldn't be prowling about his room while he was at the lab. Curiosity was a far stronger feeling than he knew. Knowing this would be my only chance, I got to work. Using wire cutters and a thin metal coat hanger, I constructed a makeshift lockpick. Shaking it within the keyhole, however, was not rewarding. I only succeeded in twisting the pick into a pretzel-like form, rendering it useless. Disappointed, I knew what had to be done. It was time for Plan B. I felt somewhat foolish as I hurried out in the darkness to our garden in the backyard. As I picked up a sizable stone and headed back in, my father's trust in me was broken, and he would soon know. My prize would have to be worth the damage, because there was no way I could hide or explain away a busted lock. But the allure of whatever it was that lurked within his room had such a strong pull that I almost didn't care. The need to see its contents far outweighed the fear of impending punishment. Once inside and back at the iron door, I looked down at the rock in my hand. I now had the power to solve the mystery, and I was elated. With a couple of vicious swings, the lock gave into the force and fell to the floor. Below, my heart was racing as I slowly pulled the door open and peered inside. Astonished, it was a truly marvelous sight. Inside my father's room was a plethora of tanks, wires, and devices, all of which looked to be lab-issued in design. Certainly not anything I had ever seen in a retail setting. Within the tanks, a blue, neon liquid, with pockets of air bubbling to the surface, each with its own unique creature. Some were fused together, others had too many eyes or appendages. One in particular that caught my attention was a fox-like rodent with transparent fur and skin, granting me a glimpse at the inner workings of its body. A close second favorite would have to have been a fiery orange bird the size of my palm with iridescent wings. All of these living marvels were suspended in animation, locked in a peaceful slumber behind their glass. The oddities in the room had far exceeded my expectations. My dad was creating new life, fathering a new era not only in his field, but in Mother Nature. These animals had the potential to deeply alter the face of Earth's wilderness. Perhaps they even had the power to benefit the world's ecosystem as a whole. I was so very proud of him. As I gazed at my father's work in awe, I noticed something. In the center of the room was another tank, larger than the rest, covered by a completely opaque black sheet. This must have been his pride and joy, a creature that stood out in a way the others couldn't. A magic he must have captured so brilliantly that he didn't even want to look at it himself for fear of being distracted, transfixed by its appearance. Excited, I was compelled to dislocate the sheet from the tank. In doing so, I was mortified. Behind the glass was a human, but only a portion of one. It was a head and partial torso, cut off just below the chest. New cells were being replicated at a steady pace, slowly completing its shape. With its increasingly rapid rate of regeneration, it looked as though it might be in a walking state by week's end. It being human didn't trouble me so much. It was the face, my face. This project of my dad's was a clone, a living, breathing copy of my DNA. Unsettled, I couldn't help but stare. Even the minutest detail was accurate, down to the individual hairs floating above its scalp. I was no longer enamored with my father's room. My stomach had turned to such a degree that I felt as though I had become sick. Then, the strangest thing happened. My clone opened its eyes. On either side of its nose were black ellipses, the likes of which I had never seen on a face before. After its eyelids receded, the mouth opened and I was accosted by a muffled, but frightening shriek. Its incomplete form thrashed about wildly. I ran away as fast as I could. The sound of glass shattering behind me. I foolishly forgot to close the door, too preoccupied with my own survival. I looked back once while running and saw the horrifying sight of a dark-eyed version of me from the chest up, floating through the house to my position. I left as quickly as possible and sprinted into the trees towards my father's lab. Coming from the direction of my home, a terrifying symphony of unnatural screams filled the forest link. Oh dear, you know the old saying, right? Curiosity killed the cat. Or perhaps in you in this case. I hope you make it. Yes, but satisfaction brought it back. They say cats have 9 lives. Looks like OP has 8 left. If you could the clone's lives, it'd be 17. I guess that explains the blood tests and the reason why your father ran to the lab. You need a wire piece and something more substantial to turn the locking mechanism. In my high school days I thought it'd be cool to be able to pick a lock. I used a paperclip and a small generic Swiss Army knife. I managed to pick my practice padlock a few times but never really tried anything beyond that.